What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to talk about how Arcade1up is dead. They're done. No, it's not going to be that type of video, but I did want to talk about something in a little more detail that I touched on in a YouTube short that I did earlier today. I was walking around my local Walmart. This is the one that is located next to the place that I work. It's the place that I, sneak off to, and I want to get a long lunch or just get away from work. And this particular Walmart, I don't know, all Walmarts are not created equal, but this particular Walmart has always had a healthy amount of Arcade1up stuff. There's been some decent representation of Arcade1up here. This is one of those places where they have like the half row. So not the full length row. This is about a half row. And it was always full of Arcade1up stuff. Reminds me, back in the day where they kind of got started with just the 3/4 scales, and then they had some risers. But this thing was always full. And then later on, when Arcade1up kind of hit their stride, they were offering a whole bunch of stuff. Remember, you had the stools that you could buy in store. You had the illuminated wall signs. You had, like these little placards and even some plushies. There was a lot of Arcade1up stuff at this particular place. I mean, come on. Who could forget the collectorcades? And some of the countercades were there. The little HDMI boxes. What quality? What shining examples of, American ingenuity. The HDMI boxes. It's horrible, really bad. But over the time, this has been a section that's sort of been diminished, and then they whittled it down to just the 3/4 scale cabinets. But I still saw some cool stuff there. Turtles. I saw Simpsons there. Arcade1up was, always pushing out the Pac-Man, so the Pac-Man was there in full force. You got Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter in multiple iterations. I even saw a couple deluxe cabinets there. But over time, this has definitely shrank, getting smaller and smaller. And this is not anything necessarily new, but I did happen to just make a connection and look at what is actually happening right now in my local Walmart. And some of your Walmarts may have more. You may even have less. Some Walmarts never even really have much Arcade1up stuff to begin with. But for those of you who didn't catch that YouTube short, let me go and just show off the picture here. This is a still image of the short that I did today, and this is it. This is the entirety of the Arcade1up, display at my local Walmart. One that had a lot more stuff, historically had a lot more Arcade1up stuff. And you could see that it's remarkably similar to the way Arcade1up first started. And which is kind of wild to me. I mean, you look at what they're offering here. It's just the 3/4 scale Pac-Man and a generic riser sitting off to the side. And then in the video, I made, I paid special attention to the fact that it's even got, the old wooden marquee. Remember, that was something that we thought we were going to wave bye-bye to in Generation 2, because Generation 3 ushered in all these cool lit marquees stocked with the cabinets. And of course, the games list did grow. This does have the games list. I think it's the 12 games or the 14 games from the deluxe cabinets. So that's good, and that is probably the only thing that is different from this and that very first iteration of the cabinet. In fact, if you just take the picture and take your finger and kind of cover up the eye panel, the kick plate there that has a listing of all the games, you'd be hard pressed to tell me if this was taken in 2018 or 2024. And the company, for all intents and purposes, has kind of come full circle. You look at the amount of arcade cabinets that are out there, the variety. We've talked about at length how they really haven't come out with anything new in the past year, with the exception of the claw machine. That was something new, if you can call it that. It's definitely new. You could definitely call it new. Now, sought after and desired, to each their own. Some people are really into it. Some people, like myself, really don't have any need for it. Couldn't really care less. And, the year before that wasn't really that great. There were some bangers for sure. And they've definitely taken some chances a couple years ago on some radical departures from what they're used to. Now, they had some shining spots, some arcades that really, I think Time Crisis, even though I didn't pick up the cab, definitely looked a lot like the original cab from back in the day. There's a lot of time and effort and energy put into that cabinet to make it look more like the cabinet from back in the day. But it suffered in areas that I think were way more important than the overall aesthetic, the look, and the design. The guns were an issue, for sure. The fact that we were still rocking a 17-inch monitor on a light gun game is definitely an issue. And then beyond that, they've stripped away the licensing, and we've been, reduced to what we have now. Odd things like casino-cades. It's an odd choice. Not for everybody, for sure. That's okay. Not everything has to be for everybody. The claw machine is something completely devoid of all branding, no licensing whatsoever. At least the countercade, the casino-cade, I'm sorry. At least the casino-cade had the Wheel of Fortune branding built in. The claw machine does not. And, it's been, I think, met with some mixed reviews. Some people very enthusiastic about it, bought it, pre-ordered it as soon as it was available, and we've had some quality issues, for sure. It's a little less acceptable when you're talking about something that basically has one function. It's a claw that is supposed to move left and right and drop and pick up stuff. That's really it. That's all it is. So I think at the end of the day, it's kind of a lackluster product. But going back to the display, going back to what Arcade1up is showing us now in the retail space, it means more than I think some people are going to make of it. Some people are going to diminish this and say, hey, there's nothing wrong, everything's fine, what are you worried about? This is a stupid conversation. Your presence in a retail space, it sort of presents the company in a certain way. It communicates importance, I mean, they're talking about they're the fourth largest brand in gaming. Well, why isn't your display matching the retail space of the other three? Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo. They still have a full row, multiple rows, more games. And some would say, well, there's more stuff that those three gaming companies have to show off. Controllers and games and all that. Sure. But Arcade1ups are physically larger. So why aren't you putting yourself in the same or representing yourself in the same amount of retail space as those other three? And you can say that they're bigger companies, and that's absolutely correct. But if you're trying to be number 4 and communicate that you're number 4, it's kind of hard to see for a new customer just walking in, that you are some big thing. It looks more like just a singular product, a Pac-Man cabinet. The same Pac-Man cabinet that's been there since the beginning. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have like Best Buy. You go into a Best Buy and there's like an Apple part of the store that's just the Apple store, or the Samsung portion of Best Buy, or the Microsoft Windows side where they basically chop up like a quarter of the store and that's what they are. I'm not saying that, but you can't deny that when you walk into a Best Buy and you see those three companies with all that brand presence, they seem at least important, or they seem like they're a pretty big deal. And Arcade1up has lost that. So in a lot of ways, they've come full circle. They started out with Pac-Man and a generic riser and a wooden marquee. And now, as far as the retail space is concerned, that's about all you're really going to see. As the deluxes begin to dry up in the Best Buys and all these other places, I think this is what you're going to have. Just the peasant cades from back in the day. From the way that it all started. And maybe that's just the way that the company should have stayed. We talked about this a lot all over the internet. Once the price goes up, the expectation from the consumer also goes up. And I think it makes sense. Now listen, I've paid a lot for some cabinets. I've had some, mixed, feelings about all that. My satisfaction level's gone up and down based on how much I've paid. But when I pay $700 for a cabinet, I really don't want there to be any kind of issues whatsoever. But even when I spend $700 on, let's say, T2, and I'm overall really happy with the cabinet, it didn't take long for me to decide that I needed to do a few things different here and there, little custom touches here and there to make it special, to kind of take it to the next level, to make it, something I really want to play over and over and over again. So maybe Arcade1up should have stayed in that third generation where we had the lit marquees, but it was always a cabinet that required a riser. And maybe you keep those games, the games list could have grown, but maybe that's all they should have done. Or maybe they should have stayed in the first generation with the third generation monitor and everything else just be left up to the aftermarket. third-party options for lit marquees, different control decks, different risers. If you wanted to get it, to this perfect height, you would buy one riser instead of having to buy a riser and then a riser for your riser. Maybe it should have just stayed that form factor. Maybe it should have stayed that price. You see, at $299, the complaints about the product were a lot fewer because the price was a lot lower. Maybe it should have just stayed that way. Maybe it should have even stayed the shark fin design, and hey, we just kind of roll with it, right? And it is what it is. But then you could have had, a lot of reduced cost in, coming on the production side to make these cabinets. Bang them out the same shark fin design. Have some custom artwork, but no custom risers, no lit marquees. You got to source all that yourself. And the big reason for that would be to keep the cost down. And if they kept the cost down, maybe they could have given us more variety in cabinets. Same shape, different games. That's really, at the end of the day, what this really could have been. Some people like the progression of the side panels changing. I'm a big fan of some of the designs. Some of the designs I absolutely hate. The second generation 4-players look like garbage. But maybe they should have just stayed that shark fin design, kept the cost low, but add the variety of games. And then we could have taken our $299 cabinet and gone hog wild with it. If I pay $299 for Terminator 2, well, I wouldn't feel so bad about adding or modifying it. But at the $700 price tag, when I did do something, I just felt like, wow, this seems a bit much. At the end of the day, maybe that was the problem with Arcade1up all along. Going a bit too far, maybe going over their skis, maybe moving a little too fast. Going from generation 1, 2 to 3 was probably maybe where they should have just stayed. And we could have just enjoyed it. And these would have always been what they really were. Little arcade recreations. Maybe they tried too hard to be like the real thing. And in doing so, not only did they miss that mark, but now all the customers, fans of the original arcade games, are left holding the bag. But anyway, these are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section below. Y'all have a blessed day, and I will see you right here next time. Peace.